Good evening, I'm Ian Hanemansing. Tonight, an extraordinary plea from a president under siege. The emotional and personal appeal for Canada to do more.
Please stop the bombing.
As the capital Kyiv faces new intense attacks. And an outpouring of support for Ukraine's 3 million refugees.
It's just about helping them.
Opening their homes.
I just said, we've got to save the kids. We've got to save the kids.
And their hearts. The simple, life-changing acts of kindness from strangers. Also tonight, priced out. Canadian housing costs hit record highs.
You feel that money is becoming less and less valuable.
Why relief could be just months away. This is The National. After 20 days of fighting, neither Russia nor Ukraine seem any closer to victory, but the war rolls on, destroying, displacing, and killing more by the hour. The bombardment of major cities like Kharkiv appears to be ramping up. Kyiv bracing for a Russian assault. Government officials say 30,000 civilians were allowed through Russian blockades, including from the starving city of Mariupol. The total number who have now fled Ukraine, 3 million. At least 97 children have died in the invasion so far, according to the Ukrainian president. Faced with the mounting threat from Russia, the president turned his attention to Canada today, addressing Parliament. And as Ashley Burke shows us, issued a direct, personal plea for Canada to do more.
Our friend, Volodymyr Zelensky.
He's a wartime leader who has become a symbol of resilience. Risking being tracked down by Russia to deliver a historic address to Parliament.
You all need to do more to stop Russia.
President Zelensky's speech tailor-made for Canada. He spoke about the suffering of his people, 97 children killed, asking the Prime Minister to visualize what it would be like.
Justin, can you imagine hearing your children hear all these severe explosions, bombing of airport, bombing of Ottawa airport?
He painted a picture of Canadian cities destroyed like this. No food, heat or water. Landmarks blown up.
CN Tower. Can you imagine famous CN Tower in Toronto? If it was hit by Russian bombs.
He says Canada has become a leader in providing support, but Ukraine needs more, from additional sanctions to securing a no-fly zone.
Please stop the bombing. How many more cruise missiles have to fall on our cities until you make this happen?
The Conservatives agree.
We must do more, together with our allies, to secure Ukraine's airspace.
But Canada says it can't. NATO fears it could trigger a much bigger, deadlier war.
At this point, based on the information we have a red line that we can't cross.
While politicians gathered, Moscow accused Canada of crossing a line and banned the Prime Minister and nearly the entire House of Commons from entering Russia, after Canada sanctioned another 15 Russian officials today to help Ukraine.
As friends, you can count on our unwavering and steadfast support.
I am grateful to Canadian people, and I'm confident that together we will overcome and will be victorious. Thank you to Canada.
And with that, a standing ovation for Zelensky, 3 minutes long. A show of support for a leader fighting for his country's survival.
Actually, you were in the House of Commons during the address, and what was the atmosphere like?
And it was packed in there with just something that we haven't seen for 2 years because of the pandemic. And not only were there MPs and senators on the lower level filling that area, but up in the gallery where we were sitting, there were also invited guests. So former and current military leaders, Ukrainian Canadians, and they were captivated during Zelensky's speech. You could see some of them were getting emotional, and there was also some passion there too. Some guests in the crowd started chanting, "Glory to Ukraine."
What a moment. Ashley, thank you.
Thank you.
And as Zelensky gave that speech, people across Canada, particularly with ties to Ukraine, paused and gathered to watch. Karen Pauls has their emotional reaction.
Mostly strangers, they came together to watch Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's message to Canada.
Please close the sky.
I know he's begging for air support, and I really wish that there was some way that we could do that, you know, because it's so desperate.
He wants Ukraine to be an independent country, our own country, without the fear of being bombed. So I salute President Zelensky. He's a national hero.
In Ottawa, these women were rolling and pinching and boiling ahead of a fundraiser for humanitarian efforts.
Russian bombs.
But they stopped making pierogies when Zelensky began his speech.
Taking that step to actually, you know, declare the no-fly zone and actually putting our country into the whole fray it's frightening. It's frightening for everybody as well, but on the other hand, doing nothing is even more frightening.
Across the country, at home and at work, those with ties to Ukraine stopped what they were doing to watch. Lena Stoyko came to Winnipeg from Ukraine as a teenager and still has family there. Zelensky's passionate and personal plea had her in tears, thinking of her own children safely in Canada.
97 children that are being killed right now? They are the shield for the rest of the world. Putin is a bully, and you have to stand up to a bully.
Igor Michael Chishin was in the House of Commons gallery for the speech.
We can't walk away. You know, as difficult as this will get, Canada needs to be there for Ukraine in this war, to win this war.
While the politicians work on that, one thing these women say they can do is pray. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Winnipeg.
And CBC News has learned the Prime Minister will be attending a special NATO summit in Brussels next Thursday. The meeting at NATO headquarters was announced days after a Russian airstrike on a military facility near the border with NATO member Poland. Leaders are expected to assess the war in Ukraine and weigh next steps. The U.S. President has also confirmed he will attend. Battle lines in Ukraine haven't moved much in days. Russian forces focused on encircling and hammering key cities with airstrikes and artillery, and they're facing stiff resistance in towns and suburbs. There's fresh, urgent concern from the capital that Russian attacks are about to intensify. But as Chris Brown shows us, Ukrainians say they're prepared to defend their country any way they can.
One of Kyiv's hippest neighborhoods is now in ruins. A mess of smashed brickwork and glass after Russian missiles hit a nearby factory that made artillery shells. 4 people were killed. We have patriots who truly love our country, said defiant resident Maxim Kreda. We're going to protect this city until the end. I'm not leaving. Kyiv's mayor, Vitaly Klitschko, issued an ominous video message saying today is a difficult and dangerous moment as he imposed a sweeping curfew, warning Russia's assault on the capital may be imminent.
Hi, nice to meet you. You're very welcome.
Remarkably, in the middle of all this, Kyiv received an unprecedented, daring visit by train from the prime ministers of Poland, the Czech Republic, and Slovenia, the first foreign leaders to come since Russia's invasion. We must stop this tragedy, wrote Poland's leader. In Kharkiv, which has been battered incessantly by Russian aerial attacks, firefighters had to use a long ladder to get a stricken woman out of her demolished high-rise apartment. But before they could even get her to safety, the Russian jets were back, overhead, and dropping more bombs nearby. The western Lviv region has escaped the worst of the conflict, but is dealing with many of the now 3 million refugees from the conflict zone that passed through en route to the European Union. Even here, though, the air raid sirens wail constantly. This is actually the site of a new field hospital set up in the basement of a shopping mall by a U.S. aid agency, which has just started receiving its first patients.
The things they're experiencing play a significant mental and physical toll. So we're seeing that health in general is deteriorated from what they normally would experience.
Help is also coming from people such as Svetlana Stolchenko. She works for a Ukrainian delivery company and helped arrange a donation of medical gear from Germany. She got it into Ukraine and then hired a truck and driver to take it on the overnight journey to Dnipro, far to the east.
I don't know how to say it. It's my homeland. I decided to stay in Ukraine. I don't want to leave. I want to live in this country. I love this country.
Ukrainians have been buoyed by the resistance of their army, but Russia's military is regrouping. They're now in the suburbs of Kyiv, and it seems that nothing can stop Russian missiles from decimating the country with attacks from the skies. Chris Brown, CBC News, Lviv, Ukraine.
A Fox News cameraman and a local journalist have been killed while reporting in Ukraine. 55-year-old Pierre Zakchevsky was a veteran war zone photographer. The other journalist who was killed, 24-year-old Sasha Kushnova, had been hired to help the network. Fox says the vehicle they were traveling in was near Kyiv when it was hit. The Fox News reporter Benjamin Hall was injured in the attack, and he remains in hospital. Journalists within Russia face stiff penalties if they stray too far from official views on Ukraine, so there has been a lot of concern for that woman who walked onto the set of Russia's state broadcaster with an anti-war poster. Farah Stewart tells us what happened to her next.
When Marina Ovsyannikova stepped out of the courthouse this evening after nearly 24 hours in detention, she remained defiant.
I made this decision by myself because I don't like around this invasion, and it was really terrible.
Ovsyannikova, who works for Russia's Channel 1, jumped behind the anchor chair, holding a sign that read, "No war. Don't believe the propaganda. They're lying to you here." It was a fleeting image, but a powerful one, in a country which insists on calling what's happening in Ukraine a special military operation. In a pre-recorded video, Ovsyannikova said her father was Ukrainian. She called Russia the aggressor. The only independent media in Russia that reported on the incident blurred out her protest sign over fear they too could face repercussions. Over the past 2.5 weeks, thousands have been detained for protesting.
It's not just protesters who could be caught up in this increasingly harsh crackdown, but also journalists. If anyone is accused of publishing fake news about Russia's military, they could be threatened with years in prison.
Well, you know...
Katerina Abramova works for Meduza, a Russian media outlet headquartered in Latvia, because she says its clear opposition and criticism aren't welcome back home. She called the state TV protest a good surprise.
When somebody inside the system says that it's too much, like, I'm not afraid anymore, because it's really risky, it's really dangerous, and you have to be really brave to do it.
There were fears Ovsyannikova could be headed to jail, but instead the mother of two was fined the equivalent of $350 and headed home. But there's a chance she could face more charges in the future. Farah Stewart, CBC News, Riga, Latvia.
Let's turn to other news here in Canada. Newly released court documents are shedding